This is Ross Feingold on the Taiwan Hashtag program, hosted by the Storm Media Group and coming to you from Taipei, Taiwan. Last week we talked about the sudden and unexpected decision by Terry Go Taiming, founder of the Foxconn Honhai Technology Products Manufacturing Company, not to run for president. So Mr. Go originally had joined the Kuomintang KMT primary. He lost to Han Kuo-yu, mayor of Kaohsiung. There was speculation that he would join the presidential race by getting signatures on petitions. The filing deadline to do that was last week, September 17th. He passed. Last-minute decision. Here in Taiwan, it was considered a bombshell in the political world and certainly for presidential politics. So what does it mean for the remaining candidates? Who are the remaining candidates? President Tsai, the incumbent, seeking re-election. Han Kuo-yu, mayor of Kaohsiung, the nominee of the Kuomintang. And the last-minute unexpected entrant, just like Terry Go not running, there was an unexpected last-minute entrant. The former vice president, Annette Hsiu-lien, served as vice president for 2 terms under Chen Shui-bian of the Democratic Progressive Party. Yes, Annette Hsiu-lien is a former DPP politician. A little confusion about that. Last year she said, I'm leaving the DPP. I don't like some of the things they're doing. And then when she announced that she was running for president on a signature petition basis, it turned out she hadn't completed the procedures to formally give up her membership in the DPP. She is running for vice president. She's been endorsed by a political party called the Formosa Alliance. Who are the Formosa Alliance? Well, they prefer more aggressive steps to establish a separate country, get rid of the name Republic of China, get rid of the constitution of the Republic of China, new name, new constitution, so you could call them the Taiwan independence supporters. They think Tsai Ing-wen's not been aggressive enough, that the Democratic Progressive Party has left behind some of its previous views on those issues. They've gotten away from their founding principles. Formosa Alliance has endorsed Hsiu-lien. They're going to help her get those petitions signed. She needs about 280,000. So the first polls are out, published on the Storm Media Group in Chinese, but we're going to analyze them in English. So let's look at the polls. Annette Lu, unexpected entrant into the presidential race, but polling at 10.4%. Not bad for somebody who wasn't running for president a week ago. She says she's running for president, immediately gets 10.4%. What does that tell you? Tells you that there is a segment of the population here. Doesn't matter about China's threats. They say, let's go for independence now. We want a Republic of Taiwan. We want a new name. We want a new constitution. If Annette Lu supports that, I'm going to vote for her. 10.4% of the population seems to have that view. President Tsai doing very well, over 49%, close to 50%. It's less than she got in 2016. She got about 56% of the vote in the 2016 presidential election. Of course, she'd rather be around that number. This number's not so bad, though. And then Han Kuo-yu of the Kuomintang. Where is he? Well, he's a little less than 28%. Not where he wants to be. There were some polls earlier in the summer, around June, had him over 30. But frankly, most polls actually kept Han Kuo-yu around this. We've talked about this on previous programs. A lot of the polls had Tsai Ing-wen in the low 30s. And they had Go Taiming, Terry Go, and Han Kuo-yu somewhere in the mid to high 20s. It was the same thing when Taipei Mayor Kuo-wen was considered in the polls. There was a lot of speculation that he was going to run before there was speculation that Go Taiming, Terry Go was going to run. Again, the polls were the same. Tsai Ing-wen, incumbent president, was always hovering around the mid to high 30s. Han Kuo-yu was hovering around the mid to high 20s, as was a third major candidate, whether it was Terry Go or Mayor Kuo-wen. So actually, this is not a big change for Han Kuo-yu, but the problem for Han Kuo-yu is after Terry Go decided not to run, there's no improvement for Han Kuo-yu. He's still hovering in the high 20s. So the big improvement is clearly for Tsai Ing-wen. She's rocketed up. Her poll numbers have increased dramatically. It was in the the mid 30s. Now she's up to the high 40s. She's getting close to 50%. Ma Ying-jeou, who was elected also with the mid-50s his first time in 2008, re-elected in the low 50s, so he still broke 50, even though he fell considerably from his first election. So if you're Tsai Ing-wen, of course you want to be over 50. This is looking good now. She's not peaking too early. Still has time to raise this number. Han Kuo-yu, maybe he's got time to improve. We don't know. But let's talk about some of the reasons why President Tsai Ing-wen's poll number has rocketed up from the mid-30s now to the high 40s. And the Taiwan Public Opinion Foundation that conducted this poll, Their chairman gave 5 reasons why Tsai Ing-wen's poll number has increased so much with the exit from the presidential election by Terry Go. So let's look at some of those reasons. One is the president has started to respect the separation of powers. Earlier this year, new premier Hsiu-lien, actually he's a former premier, he was a premier under Chen Shui-bian during that presidency. Tsai Ing-wen got rid of her previous premier. She also got rid of her first premier. So she's went through 2 premiers. She's now on her 3rd. Earlier this year, Hsiu-lien took over as premier. And President Tsai has made a greater effort to respect the separation of powers. Under the Constitution of the Republic of China, the president is largely supposed to be a head of state. They're supposed to be responsible for foreign affairs and national defense, not the day-to-day running of most of the executive branch agencies. So there's some school of thought here in Taiwan that starting from January of this year, the president stopped trying to micromanage every decision made by the executive branch of government, every policy announcement that they have made, or every execution of various policies, and it's helped her. It's helped her by not being so involved day to day, because if anything goes wrong, it doesn't come back to her. She's not going to be taking the political responsibility for any mistakes that the various ministries make on a day-to-day basis. So respecting the separation of powers. Next thing that may have helped President Tsai is just being a bit tougher, not being pushed around by political critics, by media critics, by China. And there's a perception here that over the course of 2019, President Tsai, she's picked up her game, she's kind of found her place, she's found her inner strength, and she's just coming across as a leader with a lot more presence than she had in the previous 3 years, and especially around the time of the DPP's electoral disaster in last year's local elections in November 2018. So just being a more tougher and assertive leader is helping her poll numbers. Next issue is similar to the first one of respecting the separation of powers. It's just giving the premier himself, giving Hsiu-lien, the premier, sufficient autonomy to run the ministries, to execute policies, not micromanaging him. So not only respecting the separation of powers, but really stepping back and giving the government ministries autonomy to do their thing. So whether it's the premier or the various ministers, the president is stepping away. She's letting them run the government on a day-to-day basis. And again, people are saying, that's actually helping President Tsai by not being involved. She's being above that day-to-day management of various political issues. Fourth reason for her increase in poll numbers, the general global environment. It might be helpful to her. So whether it's a trade war, other issues, uncertainty, economic uncertainty, for example, around the world, people like the incumbent, right? She looks stable, right? We know who she is. We know what her policies are. We kind of know what vision she has going forward, right? She talks about the various policies that her government has implemented in the past 3 years. She talks about the policy vision that they have for the next few months before the election as far as legislation that the DPP is going to try and pass in the legislative yuan. She talks about China issues a lot, Hong Kong issues. So the global environment, helpful to an incumbent, stability in an unstable global environment. The United States is looking to Taiwan to be a joint participant in various initiatives to counter negative things that China does, whether it's economically, on cybersecurity. So this global environment, it definitely helps President Tsai. She's the known quantity, not just for the voters here in Taiwan, but for other governments that are looking to have Taiwan participate in various initiatives. Very, very helpful to President Tsai. And the last issue that was identified was the performance of Han Kuo-yu. Again, this is something we've talked about on previous programs. He won the nomination, so that should have helped for unity within the Kuomintang. And that definitely did. We saw a lot of the political personalities in the Kuomintang. They said, let's unify around our candidate. And then Terry Go decided not to run. So he's not taking Kuomintang voters out of the Kuomintang because he's not running. Ko Wen-je's not running. So as far as the Kuomintang internally, yes, there's some unity. But beyond that, Han Kuo-yu's performance as a candidate, his performance as a mayor, he's come under a lot of criticism in recent weeks on various issues, both as a candidate and trying to explain his policy vision on various issues, whether it's education for children, who's to pay for things like that, social spending, energy policy, his policies towards China and Hong Kong, all these things coming under criticism. His municipal governments also coming under criticism. It may not all be necessarily fair. He's been trying to fight back against some of those accusations. But his management of the budget, his management of the sale of public land has also been criticized. He's been recently criticized by the central government and by the media for public safety issues. The central government sent additional police resources to Kaohsiung recently, and it gave the impression that public safety in Kaohsiung has been deteriorating while he's been mayor. Of course, Mayor Han has been desperately trying to refute that and saying, no, this is not really true. It's all a political attack. There's also some political attacks on his wife as well. She's now suing various media for accusations they made about her. So some of this may be fair criticism. Some of it may just be politics. That's life in a democracy and election, Mayor Han. You got to be prepared for that kind of stuff, and you got to be prepared to refute it if you have any chance of winning. So does he have any chance of winning? Well, here's one thing that Han Kuo-yu still has in his favor. We have 100 more days to the election, so there's still over 3 months, January 11th, 2020. If we look back at the 2008 Kaohsiung mayor election, 3 months out of that election, 3 months prior to November, so back in August of 2018, Han Kuo-yu was polling behind the candidate for the DPP, Chen Chi-mai, and then in those final few months, he sprinted ahead of Chen Chi-mai, and he won victory by a very large margin in a city that many people perceived as an easy win for the Democratic Progressive Party, no matter who their candidate was. But realistically speaking, they had a weak candidate, and Han Kuo-yu was an enthusiastic candidate, so he was able to change that. He was able to peak at the right time. So if we go back to the poll numbers, is Tsai Ing-wen peaking too early? Is Han Kuo-yu about to peak? Time will tell, but we'll certainly be talking about that on future editions of Taiwan Hashtag. I'm Ross Feingold, and you've been watching Taiwan Hashtag on the Storm Media Group.